You need to learn the language. I
Oh.
100%. If you understand the culture, then it will help with the language. If you learn the language, it's going to help understand the culture. I would say the best way to understand the culture is to learn the language.
Before we begin, I hope you dear viewers and listeners forgive us for any grammatical and language mistakes made in this talk. Even though we want to try our best to perfect it, what's most important for us is to get the message across. So we try not to be held back by the fear of making some mistakes. Thank you for your understanding. Now, let's jump right in. For this episode of the Lessons Learned, our special guest is a lovely and amazing English teacher who's originally from the UK. She's been teaching English in Thailand for over 8 years now. And I'm also really proud to say that she is one of the sweetest friends I've ever had. This is krurosie ค่ะ Ladies and gentlemen, this is the loveliest teacher and the sweetest friend I could ever ask for. krurosie ค่ะ
Hi, Kana. Oh, you're so nice.
First of all, I think a lot of people might know you already since we've been doing live for many times. And of course, you are the celebrity in Thailand. And but still, as a tradition, shall we start by introducing yourself a little bit? Maybe where you're from, what you're working on right now.
Sure. Okay. So my name is Rosie. Actually, my name is Rosanna. But when I first came to Thailand, I told everyone, okay, my name's Rosanna. And then everyone couldn't really say my name that well. So I was like, like Rosie. And then so my name has actually become Rosie. But back in the UK, everyone calls me Rosanna. So yeah, first interesting fact about me. I'm from Oxford, which is in the UK. If anybody doesn't know exactly where it is, it's quite near to London. So it's in the south of England. And I have been living in Bangkok for the last 8 years. Feels so strange to actually say that. 8 whole years. And I've been teaching here. I actually moved out here 8 years ago and kind of expected to stay for maybe just 1 year. And then as the years have gone by, it's now become 8 years, which I think is very, very normal for foreigners, that they feel like they graduate from university and they feel like, oh, I want to move to Thailand, do something new. And then, I'll go back to the UK, and it never happens. So I'm a like perfect example of a foreigner kind of falling in love with Thailand and staying here.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. What are the 3 English words that best describe you?
Okay, so I think we should begin with sincere. I would say sincere just because the fact I'm very open, I'm very honest. These are not my other words, just explaining why I feel like I'm sincere. And if I'm friendly with somebody, then it's genuine. I'm not fake in any way. Second of all, I'm easygoing. And I think this helps a lot as a teacher, that people, I guess, feel relaxed with me. Maybe if you didn't know me, maybe people wouldn't think that about me. I don't know. But I feel I feel like I'm easygoing. And finally, considerate. I feel like it can be both a good thing and a bad thing, that I often can overthink things and I want to make people happy. So I would describe myself as considerate.
Now, let's talk a bit about your educational background, right? So,
okay, yes.
It's really interesting because you studied Thai and Southeast Asian studies, am I right?
Yes, I did, yes.
In the UK. So why did you decide to study about Thailand and Southeast Asia?
So for me, I grew up surrounded by Asian people. So my mom was a host mother. I don't know if I've ever told you this, Kanat. So my mom was a host mother. So we always had students staying in our house. And they were not many Thai, but we had lots of Japanese students, Chinese, Taiwanese. I mean, people from all over the world who were coming to the UK and they were studying English in the UK. So I was brought up, just around Asian people. So it was a natural thing that I was interested in Asian culture. So that's kind of where it began. And then at school, first of all, I was kind of interested in French. I did very well at French. I'll be honest. I liked the language. I liked French culture, but I just was not very good at French language. So then I decided, I had a feeling like I can do languages, but maybe French isn't the path that I need to go down. Maybe I need to kind of, instead of doing French, maybe learn a new language. So that's when I decided to think about learning an Asian language. And I basically came up with Thai language and I researched it. I realized that it had an alphabet like English. And I was like, excellent, it has an alphabet. So yeah, it just interested me. And so then, as well as that, I had met lots of Thai people in England as well. As I got older, I worked in a Thai restaurant. And so kind of everything kind of came together that this was then my decision, okay, to learn Thai and Southeast Asian studies. And I wanted to learn about Asian culture as well. So when I say like Southeast Asian studies, it was like politics, economics, history, culture. It was all of those things together. It was a wonderful major to take. And then of course with Thai language as well.
Have you been to Thailand before taking the course about Thailand and stuff?
No. So this is quite unusual. So yeah, this is quite unusual because most people had, most people had, to be honest. But I hadn't. So I just kind of went right in at the deep end. And yeah, I'd never been to Thailand before. I just started learning Thai language without ever visiting Thailand. I actually came to study my second year. So I studied at Chiang Mai University.
Oh, right.
In my second year, which, sorry, I forgot to say about. So yeah, first year was kind of like learning the alphabet, learning the sounds, learning the tones, learning simple vocabulary. And then my second year was in Chiang Mai, like learning everything.
Did you plan that you were like, oh, I'm going to probably come live in Thailand?
No, so interestingly not, Kana. So I kind of studied here, then I graduated, then I had year 3, year 4 back in Leeds University. And then when I graduated, I didn't really know, like, shall I come back to Thailand? I was quite unsure. And it was my mum who was like, you've just studied 4 years of Thai language. You need to go back to Thailand.
Do you always picture yourself like coming to live in Thailand while you're studying? Or is it something that, I don't know, I'm open up to opportunities?
Yeah, so Kanara, I think this is more to do with just how I think in life. Like, I don't like to plan too much in advance. I like to more go with like the situation and how I'm feeling at that moment. And which obviously can be both a positive thing and a negative thing, but I don't really think too much about the future. In the past, I used to focus too much on the past, which is just totally pointless. Nowadays, I just very much just live in the present about like doing what I can do at this present moment. So I don't really plan too much. And so I guess that's how, like, with living in Thailand for so long, I've never planned like, okay, I'm going to stay another year. It's just kind of like go with the flow. Just go with what feels right at that situation and like at that moment. I feel like if you plan too much, I feel like it can put pressure on you. And obviously, it's nice to have goals. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have goals. I think goals are excellent, but I just don't think we can plan exactly where our life will be in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time. We can have an idea, but we can't plan 100%. So I like that, and I like to go with the flow and have goals, but keep those goals quite open and go with what works best at that time and my happiness.
Can you walk us through the journey of you? Of course, you came to Thailand, but your journey to becoming an educator in Thailand. How did it happen? What were the steps taken?
Okay, so I mean, when I first moved here, I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. So I did a course so I could become a teacher here in Thailand. Then I started working at a language school, and I did that for 2 years. That was a great beginning. It was like a stepping stone to my career because I just moved here. I didn't really know anybody. It was quite nice to have that basis. It was like the stuff that I was teaching, they already prepared the content for me. So I didn't have much flexibility, but it was quite good. Like as a beginner, like when you start out as a teacher, you obviously don't have that experience. So it's nice to have like lots of the content there for you. And there were some situations where you could kind of be a bit flexible, but not 100%. And then after then, I then worked in another language school, and that was much more flexible. That was actually Ajahn Adam's language school. Yeah, so I worked with him, and that was obviously wonderful. He's just absolutely great. So I worked in his language school for about 3 years. And then since then, I have just basically been focusing on building up my own students and basically doing what I love most and teaching and doing my TV show as well. So nowadays I'm teaching, I have my TV show, and yeah, it's all going well. So I think that for me, everything's been very gradual, and I feel like I said with the language school at the beginning, it was quite nice to do everything quite gradually. And obviously, the more experience that I've had, then I feel confident enough to be able to take on students myself under my name.
We always talk about this on a lot of our lives, I think, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, about the differences in culture. You understand both the Western and Southeast Asian culture, right? So, and you studied about Thailand before. So was the experience of living in Thailand, the real experience of now living for 8 years, different from what you had in mind when you were in school?
It's a very, very good question. So, I mean, I'll be honest, my Ajahn at university, both of them, they were very good, especially the German Ajahn. He was very, very good at kind of telling us things about Thai culture, which there were things that kind of amazed me, and I was I'm not shocked by, but I found very, very interesting. But I don't think I believed him 100%, and I thought maybe he was exaggerating. And then when I came here, I realized, okay, actually what he said was true. So things like, I remember him talking about the lottery. And I don't think actually we've ever talked about this, but I remember he was telling me like, oh, this tree, and that the Thai people were like rubbing the tree or something to try and get the lottery numbers. And I just thought like, no, like I thought like, is this true?
Can't be
Is
true.
he exaggerating? Or I thought like, okay, only like maybe a small number of people think like that. I mean, and then I came here and I realized that the lottery is is almost a part of Thai culture, which I find really, really interesting.
No, we haven't talked about this, I think. I've lived here all my life and I still feel like, wow. Now, out of my curiosity, I guess I haven't asked you this yet. So I think it will be interesting. I want to know what's the most frequently asked question that you have been asked. Maybe one FAQ, question from English people, your friends back in the UK, knowing that you are living in Thailand. What's the one question? And maybe another most frequently asked question from maybe Thai people when they first met you, and then you introduce yourself and you're like, I'm from the UK. What's the one most question from both sides?
Okay, fine. Okay, so if we talk about the UK and what I'm most asked, to be honest, I'm probably most asked about the food. And
how's the food?
Yeah, they ask like, is it really as cheap as like they've heard, and is Thai food as really as good as people say it is? Because we have Thai food in the UK, but if it's someone that's never been to Thailand, they probably ask like, is the food really that amazing? Yes, it is. And is it really cheap? Yes, it is. So I would say, probably about the food actually. About me living in Thailand, and the most commonly asked questions of Thai people would probably be like, why did you end up living here? That's, I mean, just as you, I think they say like, they probably like, how long have you lived in Thailand, and like, what made you decide to come to Thailand in the first place?
Okay, now let's talk about one favorite, maybe something that you like about the Thai culture that you don't have in the UK.
Oh God, it's hard to say something that we don't have, like 100%. If I just talk about something which I love about Thai culture, I would just say in general, it's a very kind of typical one, but I still have to say that Thai people in general are very friendly. They are very smiley. And obviously, Thai culture is known as being like, Thailand is known as being like the land of the smiles. And I think it's true. And especially if you go to like another province, I feel like it's even more noticeable. I guess in Bangkok, it's very busy here, so it's maybe a little bit less noticeable. But if you go up country, it's so noticeable, like how friendly people are and how smiley they are, and that they're interested in getting to know why is this like foreigner here in Thailand, what's she doing.
I see. That's really nice. How about one culture it could be anything, tangible or intangible, one maybe your favorite thing in the UK that you couldn't find in Thailand?
The food. So I've told you that Thai food is amazing. But personally, I'm vegetarian. Well, I'm pescatarian. So for anybody who doesn't know what pescatarian is, pescatarian means that you can eat seafood, but you can't eat meat. So kind of like, I should say it's kind of like half vegetarian. So it's like I eat fish, I eat prawns, but I don't eat chicken, beef. Okay, I don't eat any of that. So back in the UK, especially nowadays, so many people are turning vegetarian, vegan, pescatarian. So now in the supermarkets, it's all of this kind of vegetarian food, vegan food is so readily available. And when you go to a restaurant, they always have like a V for like vegetarian or vegan. And so I feel like it's just very vegetarian or vegan friendly. And I feel like it's a little bit harder. So I try and eat as much vegetarian or vegan food as possible if it is available. And it's just a little bit harder here.
This is a must question again, but have you experienced any culture shock when you first arrived in Thailand?
Oh, it's a very good question. When I think about when I first came to Thailand, so that was 10 or 11 years ago that I was first in Chiang Mai. Any culture shock? I would say something, that we've talked about before, but it has to be said. To do with like Thai people maybe asking things that we wouldn't ask back in the UK. Things like, do you have a boyfriend? Like, to be honest, it's not a big deal. I'm not serious about it. But it's still I wouldn't say it was culture shock. It was just more like, oh, wow.
Surprising.
Just like, exactly. I would say it was just more like surprising. And maybe just about like appearance. Again, we've talked about this before, but it has to be said that Thai people are just very open, like with regards to like, oh, you look amazing. So it can work both positive and negative. Like if you look nice, then a Thai person will like, oh, wow, you look so nice. You look so beautiful. But on the other hand, if you've put on weight, you're looking fatter, then sure, Thai people will probably tell you.
อ้วนขึ้นนะผอมลงนะ something like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so it's not culture shock exactly. It's more just something that, I was surprised by, because people always think of Asian people and Thai people as being more reserved than Western people. And so this is something which I find very interesting, because some people, people kind of have this idea like Thai people, Asian people are just like so quiet, so reserved, and that Western people, they're very straightforward. And it's interesting because on the one hand, we are, but then on the one hand, I would say that Thai people are more straightforward.
Right.
And I think maybe it depends on the topic. It may depend on like the dynamics, depending on the hierarchy. I really think there's so many factors in what situations Thai people are more straightforward. But I would definitely say that, when some Thai students, they say to me like, oh, but English people are so like straightforward and so open. And I'm like, but so are Thai people. For me in general, I find that people are happy to ask me things and So yeah, like I said, I think it maybe depends on the situation. It may depend on the topic. So I think it's not a culture shock. It was more interesting that Thai people were much more open than I had imagined in both a positive, like it can be like a positive thing, obviously, that Thai people are not like quiet and innocent. Like some people imagine like, oh, Asian people, they're so like, yeah, but they don't talk, they don't ask questions, but no.
It depends. It totally
It really
depends. Like, yes, I agree 100%. And I feel like when we talk about culture, I think we tend to generalize. I think that's an interesting thing, right?
Exactly.
We tend to generalize that. Or sometimes Americans will be saying British people are more reserved. It depends as well, right? Or more posh, more I don't know. It depends on the person, it depends on the situation, it depends on the topic. So I would
It
say there
does.
are a lot of variation. And when we think about culture, just like you said, when we think about culture, if we generalize that Thai people is supposed to be this way only, or Asian people is
Exactly.
supposed to be this way only, or British people, Western people is supposed to be this way, I think we will get confused and we tend to I don't know if it's called stereotyping, maybe.
Yeah, it
Could
is.
be.
Exactly, it is. Exactly,
Yeah.
it is.
Stereotyping, saying like all people from this same group, this culture, it's all the same. It's not. Yeah.
Exactly, Kana, definitely. But I mean, there's so many things about Thai culture. And like I said about to do the openness, yeah, it was actually kind of surprising in like a positive way that I was like, oh, wow, Thai people are really open and direct and straightforward. And I like that. I really do. I appreciate that. And small things. Oh, I just have to add one thing, which I love about Thai culture.
Yes.
I love that people always like that when you walk past somebody that you like lower your head.
Oh,
like,
yes.
And I like it. And I think I've said this before, but when I go back to the UK, I kind of do it automatically. But like, I do it. I feel like it's a really polite thing instead of just kind of walking through, like you're on the BTS and you want to get off, just walking. It's kind of like, oh, sorry, I'm coming through. I love it. It's so polite.
I think I told you this as well, but I did that in the States. I think I kind of like bowed a little bit. And then there's a lady asking me, are you looking for something?
You did tell me, Kana. Oh my God.
I haven't told you this. It was so funny because it becomes my habit, right? That whenever I walk past by, whether senior or junior, I always like, it's a habit. มันเป็นนิสัยเนอะเราก็ต้องแบบโค้งก้ม something like that. And then there's a lady asking me like, are you looking for something? Did you drop something? And I was, no, like it was my culture.
I'm just being polite.
For people who are planning to move abroad, or maybe some people, international viewers that are planning to maybe live in Thailand, do you have any tips or suggestions on how to adapt to a totally new culture, new environment from the UK to Thailand? Any tips or tricks or suggestions?
You need to learn the language. 100%. I don't think you can understand the culture without learning the language. So I would just, for me, and I always emphasize this, that just language and culture, they go so hand in hand. So if you understand the culture, then it will help with the language. If you learn the language, it's going to help understand the culture. So yeah, I would say the best way to understand the culture is to learn the language 100%. I think that way you can understand why people do things, how they express themselves. And also it will help understand maybe why Thai people may say something, like, for example, if a Thai person says something in English and they're obviously translating from Thai to English, they may express it like in a way that may sound a little bit rude, for example. But if you understand Thai language, you know that they've just translated directly Thai to English. So that kind of thing, it'll be like, oh, they don't mean that in a rude way. They've just basically just translated from Thai language to English language. And then that will help to understand why a Thai person has expressed themselves in that way. So I think that's so important to learn the language, to understand the culture.
And vice versa as well, right? If you're learning the language, it will be super important to also learn the culture with it.
Exactly, 100%.
Let's talk about language learning. You
Yep.
are an excellent English teacher teaching Thai people, and you have also excelled at learning and speaking Thai language, which I don't think that many people could do that. And I figured that we have amazing international viewers from all over the world watching the videos on this channel as well, who are interested in learning Thai.
Ooh,
Yeah, so we would
nice.
love for you to maybe share your experience learning Thai. So first of all, is Thai your second language?
Yes. As I said, I tried learning French. It just didn't happen. So yes, Thai is my second language officially.
Okay. What's the hardest and easiest thing about learning Thai?
Oh, okay. So the hardest thing has to be the tones. Okay. Obviously, English is not a tonal language. So right from the beginning, it's so difficult to hear the tones. So you have to begin right from the beginning by being able to distinguish the tones, because if you can help listen and distinguish the tones just by listening, that's like the stepping stone to then be able to actually pronounce these tones, say these tones correctly. So that has to be the hardest thing, the tones, and really understanding of like how high tone works, mid tone, low tone. Yeah, it took me so long and I just didn't get it. I remember simple word like ron, like a high tone, even if I teach like my friend and they like, okay, teach me something like, what does hot mean? I'm like, ron. And they're like, ron. It takes a long time to be able to understand how you go up. It really takes time, and it's by listening and copying, because the more you listen, then you're going to internalize it, and then obviously it will help with your output. So 100% the tones are the hardest thing, but they're so important. And this is something which I just want to add. Okay, it's so important that you learn the alphabet when learning Thai language. If you can learn the alphabet, you can learn the tones. It's going to be the foundation of learning Thai language, 100%.
And there's so many tones as well. I think the hardest part for a lot of international people is like ga 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 ga. It's not just in English. It's like intonation is like, are you hungry or something like that. It's just kind of like one step, right? But there's like 5 steps that you can go, and a lot of exceptions, right?
So that is the hardest part, but also the most important part of learning Thai language. So I think that part is kind of quite difficult to overcome at the beginning. I know that people kind of start to learn Thai language and then they feel so overwhelmed and they may give up. But if you can be patient at the beginning with these tones and learning the alphabet, you've got it. You've got it, guys.
สำหรับThai viewers for the Thai viewers สำหรับคนไทยที่กำลังดูอยู่ตอนนี้นะคะภาษาไทยก็ไม่ง่ายเลยนะคะภาษาไทยก็ไม่ง่ายเหมือนกันเนาะเราสามารถเรียนภาษาอะไรก็ได้ไม่มีภาษาที่แบบแบบมันง่ายไปหมดแล้วก็ไม่มีภาษาที่มันยากจนเกินไปในทุกๆด้านนะคะ How about the easiest thing?
The easiest thing is probably actually just learning vocabulary. So once you have the foundation, like I said, of the alphabet, of the tones, Thai vocabulary is just, for me, it's not that difficult to remember. I find Thai words are quite short, and I find that many words kind of are put together. For example, a word like refrigerator. In English, we have to learn the word refrigerator or fridge.
Right.
But in Thai, you just have tu yen. Okay, so tu meaning box, yen meaning cool, the cool box. So it's like this kind of thing that there's kind of like a system, and sometimes if I don't know the word, I can guess it, not always correct, but I can guess it by explaining it in very simple terms, because that's how many Thai words are put together, just by putting together very short words to becoming a slightly longer word.
It just, you can guess it. It makes sense.
It does, exactly. It makes sense.
All right. Can you maybe share a little bit of tips for people who want to learn Thai in how you were able to learn? Of course, there are a lot of difficult things that you need to learn, of course, the tones and everything, but do you have any tips to maybe like speed up the language learning process for some people?
I mean, so this is not just for Thai language, this is just for all languages. Obviously, doing a little bit every day, writing down new vocabulary. I mean, if you're a foreigner living in Thailand, I mean, as I said, just to emphasize so much the importance of learning the alphabet, there are so many foreigners who have learnt Thai, but their pronunciation is weak. And for the simple reason that they're thinking in an English way. So they maybe can speak, but their tones and their pronunciation is not so clear because they've learned 100% from listening, which is important, obviously. But if you can learn the correct pronunciation, the correct sounds, and learn these tones, it's going to help so much with just your pronunciation and also like when you're walking around, like for me, looking at signs, like, I mean, there's so much, obviously, when you live here, you can just look around and there's always signs and like, what does that word mean? And once you can read the Thai alphabet, then obviously you're just incorporating it into your everyday life of just a little bit, learning a little bit every day. But for people maybe living outside of Thailand, reading is a great way. Actually speaking out loud. So you're not just speaking in your head, actually reading things out loud, obviously practicing writing your own sentences, which obviously is the same with learning any second language, is being proactive and doing a little bit every day, doing a little bit of speaking, doing a little bit of reading, writing, listening, all of these things, which are something which we should do every day when learning a second language.
One of the things that I feel like you and we always talk about is our work, of course, about teaching, right? And I want the world to know how brilliant you are. So let's talk a bit about that. Have you always wanted to be a teacher when you were studying? Is it something that you always wanted to do?
No. So I know that I should answer yes, but the honest truth is no. Back in school, back at university, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And again, I was just always open. So I never really had that feeling of like, oh, I really want to be a teacher. I never had that at all. So when I graduated, like I said, my mom kind of pushed me coming back to Thailand. And then I thought like, okay, being a teacher is the thing that most makes sense. And then I didn't realize like at the time how much my Thai language would help with becoming a teacher, not because I can translate, but more just the whole understanding of learning a second language and understanding why Thai people use certain phrases, why they find like just a very simple thing of like adjectives and verbs, because I understand Thai language. So I understand, okay, in Thai language, you don't have to say, okay, we don't say chan plus verb to be ron. Okay, we just say chan ron. That's it. So that's why like Thai people really struggle because they say, I hot.
Yes.
And so like if I had never learned Thai language, I'd be like, but come on, it's so clear. I mean, obviously you need verb to be because it's an adjective. So I think that this has just helped me. It helped me so much and it still helps me today understanding Thai language, and that helps me become a better teacher. So going back to your question, I always wanted to be a teacher? The answer is no, but since I started, it's something which I realized how much I enjoy helping people. Maybe that's due to my personality that I just really I don't like seeing people struggling, and I want to be part of people's future and want to actually make a change in people's lives. So I don't think I realized that until actually I was in the situation of where I was teaching people and I was like, oh, this is great. And yeah, I love it.
I feel like I agree 100%. And I feel like what I can tell from just talking to you for the first time is you have so much understanding. And of course, that comes from studying and getting to know Thai people as well. You have so much understanding and empathy for your students, which is, I think, really essential to becoming a great teacher, right? When we met, we talk about the fact that each teacher has their own, I don't know what's called, a teaching philosophy or teaching principle or teaching styles. Yeah, not every English teacher has to be the same or an expertise in the same thing, right? So it's not like a straight line that every teacher must go into this level. And that's why I really love this English teaching communities that we can kind of like fill in and like, oh, you're great at this, I'm great at this, and we can help each other. So I think people would want to know, how would you describe your maybe teaching style or teaching philosophy?
So my teaching style and my general philosophy is getting the students to be as active as possible. And so this is just something that I've noticed a lot from Thai students. They kind of have this knowledge, they've maybe learned the grammar rules, they've learned like how to say a word, or they maybe know how to say it, but when they're actually in a position of being active, it's so different. So they kind of have these ideas, okay, they've maybe learned things, they've heard this word, but they've never been in the situation of actively having to use, okay, the different vocabulary, having to use these structures themselves. So my general teaching style is as active as possible, getting them to speak as much as possible, instead of just listening. Obviously, listening is important, and it's something which actually students, especially weaker students, that they're scared to be active, and that sometimes students, they feel like, oh, I'm a beginner, but I just need to listen. And I'm like, no, right from the beginning, you need to be pushed out of your comfort zone, and you need to be copying me, you need to be making your own sentences. So in general, like I said, my philosophy, getting students as active as quickly as possible, pushing the students outside of their comfort zone, something that's very difficult for students at the beginning, but I hope that they appreciate it in the future. And also, if I'm teaching students as a class, getting the environment, or whether it's private students or a group class, just getting the environment as relaxed as possible. And so I don't really see my students as my students. They are my students, but I see them also as my friend. So I think this helps a lot as well, because I've got a lot of empathy for them. So I try and just make the whole learning experience for them as enjoyable as possible. I want them to come to class and not feel pressurized. I don't want them to be like worried about what other students think about them or what I think. Basically have zero judgment in the class, and it should be like that. And it's something which, me learning Thai, that I was always worried about other students judging whether they were or not. And it was something I was just so worried about. And we're always going to make mistakes. I mean, it's just the whole part of learning a language. We're going to make mistakes. And so I just tell students, relax, let's have fun with this. Let me push you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but we can do it together. And we need to be as active as possible. So I guess that would sum up my teaching style in general. It should be fun, it should be relaxed, but we can learn in that kind of situation. The moment you kind of tense up, you're not going to be taking things in. You're just going to be focusing on, I'm stressed, I'm worried, which is why I just create this atmosphere that's fun, it's relaxed, and it's active.
Wow, this is what I love so much. Actually, I feel like your role, I think your role as a facilitator, so you don't just teach the information, but you facilitate the learning process as well, right? To push someone to be more active, to be proactive about their learning process, and also to really provide that safe environment or safe zone for people to make mistakes, because they are going to have to make a lot of mistakes to learn, right? That's
That's
amazing.
it, kind of.
It is once said that the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, and the great teacher inspires. I got that from Google.
Oh, nice. Oh, I like it.
but and I feel like you did that a lot, and you help inspire a lot of people to learn English. So do you have any tips on how to, if let's say if teachers are listening to this show right now or are learning from you, what are the tips to help motivate or inspire your students to learn English?
Oh, so I think it's a lot about empathy. And I think if we can empathize with our students, then it helps us to slow down. I think it's important to have empathy and see all students as individuals. And so not just see people as like group class, you need to see everybody. Everyone has different learning experiences. People learn quickly, some people learn slowly. So I think as a teacher, when you remember that people learn at different paces, people are individuals with lives, I think this is one thing just that I always remember with students. Students have lives outside of my class. They have jobs, they have families, they have their struggles. So I have to keep this in mind, and I always do. And this is why I said I don't just see them as students, because I think if we just see them as a student in the class, then we're just like, oh, well, why can't, like, you may ask yourself, why can't this student understand this simple concept? Like I said, like I said, very simple, I hot. If a student keeps saying this, okay, it's about empathizing and remembering, hang on a second, this student may be really busy with their job, may have problems at home, they may be stressed, whatever reason, or they may have had a bad experience learning English in the past. So this helps me as a teacher, this empathy and understanding of the students as an individual helps so much then in the class. And then that helps me be able to motivate and inspire my students, because I see them as individuals, I see them as people with their own lives, and we just have to be empathetic towards those students, and like I said, see them as individuals, not students.
That's amazing. Yay. It's like Miss Universe answering questions. Last question for today, even though I can't stop talking, but what do you think is the most important thing? I think you already share some tips in learning languages, not just Thai language, but any language. I want to know maybe the most important thing in learning a second language.
Okay, so for me, I guess actually, the most important thing when learning a language is that you enjoy it. So I think that to be able to enjoy it, you need to kind of adapt the language learning to your personality. And so people have, like I said, there are so many ways to learn a language. So you need to adapt that to what you enjoy and your interests. Like some people tell me like, oh, Rosie, you should watch like Thai lakon or whatever. But I don't really love that kind of style of TV show. And so it wouldn't work for me, but some people love it. So I think that you need to find something that you love and change it into Thai. Or like, for example, let's say I want to learn about some history. At my level, I could watch a YouTube video in Thai. So I think that you need to adapt it to your personality instead of just everybody learning in the same way. And I think it's easier, especially as an adult, that you can focus on your interests. We know as adults what interests us, what we don't like. So it should be about like doing what we enjoy and adapting our interests to the Thai learning language process or whatever language we're learning. So we have to enjoy it. So that's the most important thing. Enjoy it and shape the language learning process towards your own interests as well.
That's amazing. I think this is the idea of personalized learning, right? That you said. There's no such like one size fits all kind of strategy for learning languages. There's no like, this is the one best way to learn it, and everybody has to do it in the same way, right? So it's usually just how you personalize it to best fit your interests, your liking, your personality, just like you said. That's awesome. Okay. Wow, Rosie. I'm so grateful. I'm super grateful. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I just have a confession to make. I can't stop talking when I'm with Rosie. I don't know how to shut my mouth. I think I should say this on the show because I don't know if I've ever told you this, but it's so unreal how someone can be this incredibly beautiful and genuinely sweet and awesome at the same time. I don't know how
you're
that
so
is.
nice. No, you're
I don't know
so
how
nice.
that is even possible. I keep telling everyone this, Rosie, to be honest with you. It's unbelievable how someone as special as you really exists in the real world.
But but I would think exactly the same as you. And I don't think that you realize this about yourself either. So, I mean, you are a perfect example of what you've just said. So I would say that you just don't realize it about yourself. You're like a walking example without knowing it.
Why are we complimenting each other? But really, I've been friends with Rosie for over a year now, right?
Yeah.
Over a year now, and I just couldn't be more grateful. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is my confession. I'm in love. Please apologize to Pele for saying this, my love confession. But really, if you know Rosie like I do know her, you wouldn't think that I was overstating things at all because she's really,
oh no, Kana, you're too nice.
awesome.
You are far too nice. I feel the exact same about you, honestly. I feel so grateful to have you in my life, honestly.
We are match made in heaven.
We are, exactly. A match made in Bangkok.
In Bangkok, yes. Thank you for making your time to be here on the show, chatting with me today. And I'm forever grateful to have such an amazing friend like you, Rosie. Thank you so
thank
much.
you. No, Kana, I actually need to thank you so much for inviting me on the show. You had great questions. And yeah, it's always so nice to talk to you and share our feelings. And I feel like we're always on the same wavelength about so many things. So yeah, I should say thank you to you. Thank you to your team for inviting me on the show. I feel very privileged because you are so popular. And yeah, I feel very, very privileged to be on your show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm pretty sure a lot of people watching this today are also learning a lot from you. So, ladies and gentlemen, what are the lessons you have learned from today's talk? Please let us know in the comment. I'm pretty sure Rosie is going to go read all your comments, and I will also go and read and everything that you have learned from today as well. วันนี้ได้เรียนรู้อะไรจาก Rosie บ้างนะคะโอ้โหจัดเต็มเลยนะนี่ไม่ได้ขอตัวมาง่ายๆแต่วันนี้เราจัดเต็มให้เลยนะคะทุกคนได้เรียนรู้อะไรมาแชร์กันในคอมเมนต์ได้เลยนะคะ Alright, thank you so much for watching and listening to our show, and that's it for today. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
ถ้าได้ประโยชน์จากวิดีโอนี้ชอบเนื้อหาแบบนี้กด subscribe กดไลค์กดกระดิ่งแจ้งเตือนจะได้ไม่พลาดคอนเทนต์ต่อไปของฝรั่งอังมอให้ทุกคนได้เรียนรู้และเก่งขึ้นไปด้วยกันนะคะ Happy learning